Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this is a Danish Deception part 11. So that means if you've not seen the other parts, you just have to pause. You can't start from here. Let me not lie to you. You won't understand the story, and besides, you'll be missing a whole lot of the story. So those of you that are up to date, let's dig in and
The Danish Deception, Part 11. Okay, so he tells me that his realtor has found a buyer for this apartment complex, and there's one caveat. So apparently it's a very wealthy family. He did not know who this wealthy family was. But this family, the way they draft up the contracts, whenever they have to buy a property for tax purposes, and there's like a certain cutoff for when they need to acquire a property, they have like their own contract drafted up that basically requires the buyer and the seller to put money into escrow so that if the seller changes their mind of selling the house, they get liquidated damages. Basically, make sure the deal goes through. I have never experienced anything like this in my real estate career. Obviously, Denmark is a different country. I didn't really know how real estate worked there. So not only is it different rules and guidelines, but it's also, I've never worked with like a super ultra wealthy family before to understand that this might be a requirement or something added in their contracts. And so I remember being like, how much is it going to be? And he's like, oh, it's going to be like $120,000. I remember just like being like, well, we don't have this money. Like, there's no way we can make this work. And so he said, I'm going to be able to come up with a loan, get a loan from a bank. I've already called them. I can get a loan from them for like $100,000. So we're just going to be short another amount. And at this point, my accounts are dwindling. And because I was in this long distance relationship, I was not focused on doing real estate at all. Like, I had taken a full step back from real estate. But I did have a career where I was making well over six figures. So I still was like making a pretty steady income. But my savings had been dwindling down. So I didn't have a whole lot of money left. So I remember at this point, he's like, we should make this deal work. And I'm seeing this as a way to get out of our financial position. And let me just say, my ex, if he wasn't such a narcissistic psychopath, he'd be such a great actor, because the way he sold this stuff to me, like, it was insane. So
and to be honest, I know now that it's because she's narrating it, it will be easy for us to pick on the red flags. But if we were to be the one living it out, the way she's saying it, the guy is he's very good. So even you yourself, that you're thinking, oh, you won't have been deceived. Like, you would have been scammed too. That guy is good.
remember he said that he was going to take his watches to a store to see if he could get it sold within 24 hours. Obviously, that might be kind of difficult. And so at this point, he was like, how much money do you have? And I was like, I really don't have a whole lot of money to give you. So I remember I gave him like a small amount, maybe like 3,000, because I wanted to make sure I had enough money for like bills and miscellaneous. And I just wanted to have a little bit of cushion. And I was getting stressed out, but he ended up coming up with the money. He says the deal goes through and that it's going to close in 6 weeks. And so he tells me what I think I'm going to do is switch my address from Denmark to the States, especially since I have been living in the States more, and I'll be able to save money on taxes. And at this point, I was like, is this tax evasion? He goes, this is absolutely not tax evasion, because I am spending more time in Dallas than I am in Denmark. And I said, okay, well, if you've done research and you feel certain about this, then I believe you. So the deal goes through. It says it's going to close in 6 weeks. And so he said, we should take a trip to celebrate. And I'm like, we don't have any money. And he was like, well, we can just use your credit cards, because, you know, like, we'll be able to pay it off whenever the money hits. And this is probably
And what's with his obsession with traveling? Hey.
one of the most like idiotic decisions I made. Y'all don't have to tell me this is stupid. I'm fully aware. But we ended up going to Portugal for a week, and we used my credit cards the majority of this trip. He had a little bit of money, because keep in mind, he is working as chief commercial officer for this tech company, and that was 100% real. And he was making about $400,000 a year. Again, 100% real. At certain times have verified the money hitting his account from his company. So he's making money, even though we're having a lot of financial stress. He's still bringing in a steady income. I'm still bringing in a steady income. So he was able to pay a little bit of the trip, and I was able to pay a little bit of the trip. So we go to Portugal. We had the most spectacular week. I remember that was the week that I decided I want to get married in this country. I love it here. It's so beautiful. I was working still at this time, and with the time difference, I was basically working from like 5 to midnight. And there was one day while we were in Portugal that I was just complaining about working. I'm like, I'm so over this job and I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I was just complaining about it. And he just said, why don't you quit? And I remember looking at him like, what do you mean quit? And he said, well, we have this money coming in and I want you to be happy. I want you to do something that brings you joy, and real estate brings you joy. And I really hadn't been doing a whole lot of real estate that year. And so I told him, I said, well, it's going to be like kind of a transition. I'm not going to be making a lot of money at first. He said, well, we're going to have a cushion, and luckily I make money. I'm going to be able to afford all the bills, and you can just focus on building your business back up. And so I was like, are you sure? He said, yes. And let me tell you, everything about this decision, it felt right, but it also felt wrong. And let me tell you, I do not regret quitting my job. I regret the timing, because we were not in a great financial position, and I was making like $150,000 a year at this job. So it was a very steady, stable income. And I trusted him to be my provider, and that was stupid. And I have never relied on a man for anything in my entire life, and I will never do it again, like never in a million years. But you know, you live and you learn, and I made the decision to put in my 2 weeks notice. And yes, I know that was idiotic. Y'all don't have to tell me. And so we go to Portugal, come back to Denmark, and we're in Denmark for maybe a day, and then we travel back to Dallas. And at this point, your girl is hurting financially, hurting, because now I'm accruing like a little bit of credit card debt. My savings is like nothing. And at this point, I'm fully trusting him, and I believe him when he says we are going to overcome this circumstance very, very, very soon. And keep in mind, at this point, I have not caught this man in a single lie. And obviously, I gave out my trust way too easily. But in my mind, I was thinking, why should I question him when he's never given me a reason to? Which is crazy, because I feel like he was giving me all the reasons with all these red flags. But we go back to Dallas, and I remember his sister and her boyfriend came to visit us for a week, and we had a good time with them, but I felt like he was super annoyed with them the entire time. He was complaining. He was just like, I just feel like they're being super cheap. They don't want to do anything. And it just felt like, again, I thought him and his sister would be a lot closer. It was weird. So we have a great trip with them visiting us, and then we go to Miami and meet up with his best friend and his girlfriend. And this was the best friend he was with whenever I met him in Croatia. So we're in Miami, and for the most part, we're using my funds for this trip, because he's obviously put most of his money into this escrow account, and he paid for a little bit of stuff, but he didn't have a whole lot. And I'm expecting this money to hit like any day now. So a couple of days after Miami, we went to Denmark to celebrate his mom's 70th birthday. We had promised her we would go. So we actually booked a round trip flight from Copenhagen when we came back home in June. So now it's August of 2023, and we're in Denmark. And I remember we're at his parents' house, and he comes to me. He's like, hey, I just got off the phone with the IRS, and they said they flagged the transaction from the apartment complex. No. And at first, I'm like pissed. I'm like, I asked you if this was going to be a problem. He's like, it's not going to be a problem. They're probably just going to take out like some taxes, not the full amount. They just need to review it, and then we'll figure it out. But I'm not concerned. You shouldn't be concerned either, even though I was super concerned. He said they set a hearing date for September 10th. At this point, it's the middle of August. So I'm like, okay, so now I have to be struggling for another month. And so I'm frustrated, but he's also like trying to calm me down, but also like gaslighting me for feeling the way I'm feeling. And so all my emotions, I'm just stuffing them in all the way. So we celebrate his mom's 70th birthday, and this is when I meet like his entire extended family, like dad and mom's siblings, all their friends. And I meet the older sister, and she's there. At this point, she's pregnant with her second child. She's there with her first child. I meet her, and she is just such a nice, kind, wonderful human. And I just can't picture her being this evil, crazy woman that beats his mom. And so I remember just feeling a little at odds about that, but you know, I'm still fully trusting my ex 100%. So a couple days after his mom's birthday, we're all hanging out at his parents' house, and we're grilling. And I remember we all start to notice kind of around the same time that his dad does not look like he's doing well, and we're starting to get a little bit concerned. And that's when my ex's mom makes the decision, like, we need to take him to the hospital. And so we pack his bags, we load him up, we go to the hospital, and I'm freaking out because I don't know if things can take a drastic turn or not. And so we're waiting at the hospital, waiting to see what the doctors will say, and I will continue on in part 12.
Hey.
The Danish Deception.
Oh, guys. Whew. Like my people say, I'm holding my heart in my hand because, whoa, what? I'm so happy that she's alive to tell this story and she looks like she's in a good place. That's the most important. But yeah, I'll see you guys in part 12. Like and subscribe. Let's go there.